I find myself in the fourth position here, wanting to associate myself with virtually everything that's been said. All these observations have been remarkably on the mark, and so I would ask that my testimony simply be put into the record, but I will draw a couple of points from it for today. I was in Yerevan in 2004 to 2006. I never dealt directly with the issue of Nagorno-Karabakh. That was being handled by the Minsk group, of course. But nonetheless, I did learn a lot about what was going on. And I learned a fair amount about Armenian history, which, by the way, is quite fascinating once you get into it. I'd just like to make 3 points about the Armenians in Karabakh, or as they call it, Artsakh. One of the earliest histories recounts that after losing an important battle to the Persians, the Armenians, quote, fled into the forests of Artsakh. That's one of the earliest references to Artsakh and to Armenians being there. Second point, a well-known, well-respected German visitor to the Caucasus in the 1840s reported that the Armenians are, quote, most numerous in the province of Karabakh after Armenian proper, end quote. And the third point, you know, we may think poorly of the Bolsheviks, and particularly of Joseph Stalin, and of many of their policies. But it was not for no reason that the Commissariat for Nationalities made Nagorno-Karabakh an autonomous region within Soviet Azerbaijan. Stalin, of course, was from the Caucasus, and there were many of his colleagues who knew the area well, and they realized that this was a different kind of place and that it needed to have an autonomy, which is, of course, what it received in 1924. Now, there are lots of arguments about whether that was the right thing to do, but my point is simply that it was clear something had to be done because this place was special. So I would maintain that the Armenians are indigenous to Karabakh. Now that claim can be disputed by academic people who draw very careful distinctions, but as was said here earlier, they do have a history in Karabakh. So whether they're completely indigenous or that they just have an important history there, I don't think it makes much difference. And it's not that we should treat indigenous people well and others badly. These people deserve to be treated with respect, whoever they are and whenever they got to Karabakh. Last week, our Supreme Court, I think, did something very, very noteworthy when it sided with the several indigenous tribes out west on the question of adoption of orphans. Now, orphans of indigenous families or background. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Armenians are in any way equivalent to the indigenous people in our out west, but the point is the court decided to strengthen the elements of sovereignty that the people out west, the indigenous people, have, and there should be respect for these groups, and I wish Azerbaijan had that same intent or inclination. I'm going to skip over a lot of this here. One of the points, though, that is sometimes disputed is whether there really is a danger of genocide. I would say absolutely there is. It's been stated here today that the second genocide has already begun. That may be questionable, but I think there is a real danger of it, and it's not only in view of the 1915 precedent, but it's also, as David has said, it's in view of the actions, recorded actions and speech of Azerbaijani officials and politicians, and that also includes politicians in Turkey. So this is real. Now, I'm leaving out some more about the failure of the OSCE Minsk group. It still theoretically exists, but I think it has, in some ways, outlived its usefulness. It was one of the few fora in which the United States, Russia, and France continued to cooperate despite the increasing numbers of friction, elements of friction between East and West. But I think at this point that process cannot be counted on, and I would join the chorus in praising the State Department for getting back into it. I do believe the State Department calculated wrongly in the last administration, devalued the Minsk group process, and that was one of the things that led to its collapse. Now, I'll come right to the end here. It seems to me that it's true that there needs to be ultimately a peace settlement, and that's for the people of Karabakh and the Azerbaijanis to work out themselves how they're going to manage to be neighbors in the future. That's not our task today. I think our task today is simply to consider how to preserve the lives of the Armenians in Karabakh in the face of a potentially genocidal threat. I certainly agree with the idea that the waiver of Section 907 ought to be rescinded. I think it should have been done at the same time as President Biden recognized the Armenian genocide. I don't know what's going on in diplomatic conversations, but I think it would be well to urge our diplomats to put the brakes on Turkish and Israeli arms sales to Baku. All the other members of the Minsk group, and Turkey is technically a member of that group, but all the others had basically agreed to preserve the military balance in the Caucasus. Now, Russia, of course, played the biggest role as a supplier to both sides. But when Israeli and Turkish high-tech drones and other equipment got in there, not to mention the F-16s, this really upset the situation and has brought us to where we are. But as the Armenian surgeon who treated Senator Dole advised him, you can't think about the way you were and what you had. You have to think about where you are now and go forward from here. And I think that's what we have to do. I think it would be very good to have some more high-level, and I mean top-level, discussions with Azerbaijan and make it crystal clear that the ethnic cleansing of the Armenians in Karabakh is absolutely unacceptable to the United States. Mr. Chairman, I actually do have some ideas about what ought to be done for an overall settlement. This is not the place for me to share them. I have to commit them to paper, but I'm planning to do that in the next few weeks. I think ultimately we do need a goal so that both sides can see that diplomacy can get to a place where they both have their dignity intact, and people can, on both sides, can accept. It's not going to be a perfect settlement from some people's point of view. As President Biden said in another context, that's politics. Compromise is of the essence. So I'll leave it there, and thank you for calling me to share my thoughts.
Ambassador Evans, thank you.